Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to class. Today we are going to talk about the process of creolization and how a new language emerges out of this process. It's a very productive phenomenon and it happens within less span of time compared to other natural languages. Before going to Creole, we need to understand the socio-political and historical background of such developments. So, post-Renaissance and the European navigation that took entire world into its stride by exploring new places, going to new places, opening of new frontiers because of good navigation system development in 16th century, and the European powers went to different coastal areas of Asia, Africa, Americas, and established trade and business relations. Now, that period also saw growth in slavery and slave extraditions. People and large population moving from one place to other, settling in a new area, and where they didn't find any language common between the indigenous population and the newly arrived group of traders. And the communication need forced them to develop a minimal, shared code for carrying out everyday business, routine businesses. If you look at this Creole or Creole languages, they are the result of last 500 years in the human history. And in 500 years, more than 100 Creoles emerged all over the world, specifically in coastal areas. And some of them have become extinct, some of them still survive with certain changes in a changed form. So we will look at the process of creolization and how a new code, a new variety emerged. This is what we are going to do today in our class. So when you look at Creole, Creole is a consequence of Pidgin. Now, what is Pidgin? So Pidgin is a language or a variety, a hybrid variety, which is minimally expanded. It has very simple grammar, a limited number of words, and no stable grammatical rules, but it helped them carry out their everyday business. It's a very restricted code, Pidgin. A mix of two languages, language A and language B, language of the community and language of the newly arrived traders. And this Pidgin over a period of time gets established, gets expanded, rules gets regularized, and then it is expanded to an extent where the structures become stable, and over a period of time coming generations acquire this newly emerged variety as mother tongue, and it becomes a Creole. So essentially a Creole is a stable language variety that develops from the simplifying and mixing of different languages into a new one within a brief period of time. That's the beauty of it. Because other natural languages have taken hundreds of years to emerge, but Creole is relatively quick development. And we can say a Creole is a neutralized and naturalized, a stable language that come into existence through mixed parent languages. And mixed parent languages means languages of the community and languages of the newly settled population. And because no code was common, Pidgin emerged out of these two codes, and that established variety of Pidgin, a developed variety of Pidgin, expanded variety of Pidgin, extended variety of Pidgin, ultimately becomes Creole. So it's a consequence of the Pidgin that evolves into a full-fledged language. So in that sense, we can say that Creoles are characterized by, number one, a tendency to systematize their inherited grammar by eliminating irregularities or regularizing the conjugation of otherwise irregular verbs, or so on and so forth. The entire morphological process, right, making plurals. So they stabilize the rules, the rules are established, and then it becomes a stable variety. Like any other language, Creoles are characterized by a consistent system of grammar. So mind you, Pidgin had a very simplified, restricted grammar and grammatical rules, but Creole has expanded and extended grammatical rules, which are neutralized, naturalized, and established. And the third characteristics of Creole is that this extended Pidginized variety, which becomes stable and emerges into Creole. It emerges into Creole when the coming generations acquire this variety as their first language. And this is how it is nativized. And once it is nativized, it is called a Creole. So Creole is an extended Pidgin with elaborate social functions and native speakers of the variety who constitute a speech community. So you understand the development of a Creole from no language, no code in common, to emergence of a common code with restricted grammar and limited vocabulary, simplified grammar and limited vocabulary, that is called Pidgin. And over a period of time, when this Pidgin is extended, it expands, rules are established, new words are added, the word forms are regularized, and it becomes a stable grammar with a natural variety. And then it is acquired as mother tongue by coming generations. And this is nativized, and this is how a new speech community emerges with this newly emerged language, right? So moving on. So it has a grammatically structured form, and many of its vocabularies are derived from superstrate language. So when we say superstrate language, that means we are talking about linguistic hierarchy, right? So when you talk about linguistic hierarchy, superstrate language refers to the language spoken by the immigrants or the newly settled population of traders. They are basically Europeans, English, French, Portuguese. So majority of Creoles that we have today or that emerged during 500 years or last 500 years, they have their English origin or the French origin or the Portuguese origin. And of course, the resources were controlled by these newly emerged settled traders. Their language, like English, like French, like Portuguese, they tend to be superstrate language. So majority of vocabulary comes from there. That's what it means here when we say it has a grammatically structured form and many of its vocabularies are derived from the superstrate language. So the superstrate language becomes a lexifier for this new variety. So words are drawn from there. Lexicon means words, so words are drawn from there. The mother or the parent language becomes a lexifier for it, the superstrate language. Thus, a Creole is a consequent development out of a pidgin that becomes stable and learned by next generation. So, this much is clear, I guess, now, right? So, this is how from no language in common to a restricted code for everyday communication and carrying out everyday business with restricted grammar and limited vocabulary called pidgin to established, naturalized, and extended variety, acquired by the coming generations, next generations as mother tongue, and finally nativized is called Creole. And in last 500 years, because of many political and historical incidents and factors, slave trade was one of the biggest factors. Around more than 100 Creoles emerged, right? And if you look at a few examples of such Creoles based on their parent language, look at a few of them, like Arabic based Creoles. One Creole you find also in India, and that is Nagamese, Assamese based Creole, right? Chinese based Tangwang, a Creole language, Dutch based Creole languages, English based Creole languages, French based Creole languages, German based Creole languages, Hindi based Creole language, one in Andaman Creole Hindi, Japanese based Yilan Creole, Japanese Kanbun Kandoku, Congo based Kituba, Malay based Creole languages, uh, you know, Nabandi based Sango, Portuguese based Creole languages, Spanish based Creole languages, Sinhala based Veda languages. So, these languages have emerged in the last 500 years. And if you look at the human history, 500 years are nothing. So, within a very short span of time, a new language, a range of new languages were born. But Creoles do not enjoy the linguistic supremacy as other natural languages enjoy because of multiple socio-political factors, right? Uh, as you know, these Creoles are the consequence of colonial, the process of colonization, and the colonial powers looked at these languages with the they treated them as inferior language, degenerate language, a bastard language, a hybrid language. So they could not enjoy, these languages could not enjoy the kind of prestige attached to English, or let's say French, or let's say Portuguese, German, other languages, right? Uh, so if you look at the some historical factors, like more than 100 Creole languages have developed since 1500, right? These varieties are predominantly based on European languages such as English, Portuguese, French, and they are the development of post-Renaissance European age of discovery, and the slave trade is primarily responsible, which allowed huge mobility of population to unknown territories, and they were forced to settle there, right? Uh, Traders had to learn to communicate with the communities across the world, which led to emergence of a pidgin and later extended, simplified, extended, enriched and stabilized, and emergence of Creole that suited their purpose. Most of the known European based Creole languages emerged in the coastal areas around the world, such as Americas, Africa, Goa, which is the west part of India, along Southeast Asia, up to Indonesia, Singapore, Macau, Hong Kong, Philippines, Malaysia, etc. So that's the historical background of the Creoles. But if you look at the process, how a pidgin develops into a Creole, the developmental stages of pidgin and Creole are categorized into four, right? Which usually appear in two contexts: social situation and linguistic correlation. So, if you look at the social situation and the linguistic correlates. So, when you have uh, a social contact which is marginal in nature, that means limited contact. So, two speech communities which have no language in common and have a very limited marginal contact, then there develops a common restricted pidgin, and that pidgin or that variety which is developed out of dire need to communicate where no language is common. This restricted code has a very simplified grammatical system and a very limited set of words, and that's why we call it restricted pidgin. That is the linguistic correlate. So, social situation is marginal contact and linguistic correlated restricted pidgin. Then when this contact sustains for a longer period of time and the functions are extended, communication functions are extended, then you have extended pidgin. And this extended pidgin, naturalizes the grammatical system, complex sentences are added, new set of vocabulary are added, new sets, new words, and enriched with this regularized, established grammatical form and a wide range of vocabulary, the restricted pidgin emerges into an extended pidgin. And this extended pidgin, right, is established and nativized. So, when we say nativized, what does it mean? Nativization means the next generations acquire this variety as mother tongue, right? So, from language A and B, a new language emerges, C, which is restricted in its nascent stage, early stage, extended and established, and then it is nativized. So, it is acquired by the next generations, and this nativization leads to it becoming a Creole. And then once it is established as a Creole, over a period of time, functions are extended, social functions are extended. So, it is not merely a language to carry out everyday business, but we see extended use of this Creole in that speech community, emergence of a solid cohesive speech community, uh, which put across, put intact by this language, newly emerged language called Creole. They are used in different walks of life. So, it's not only limited to business, trade and business and restricted use, but it expands into literature, and experiences, narratives. And then we find a well-developed speech community for that. And this is how this Creole language becomes a distinct, unique variety, like any natural language, right? And then later on, there started a movement for making it standard. So, when we say the process of standardization, that means codification, elaboration. So, grammar rules are written, thesaurus are created, dictionaries are created, texts are created, printed. They adopt some writing system, and this is how this is standardized. And usually the parent language, which is a superstate dominant language, emerges as lexifier. So, what is that lexifier? Which supplies lexicons, that means supplies words. So, standard words are drawn from that language and This process is called decreolization, and it becomes a distinct, separate new language, right? So Pidgin has a life cycle, and it is generally agreed that it is characterized into restricted and extended. It is obvious that Pidgin starts as a restricted variety of language which is used in a contact situation for the purpose of trading, but later on, when it is extended, established, and you know nativized, it becomes a Creole. And this is how a new language is born, right? But like most of non-official and minority languages, Creoles have generally been regarded as degenerate variants or dialects of their parent language. So we have a social linguistic attitude attached to these Creoles, a social attitude attached to these Creoles. These Creoles did not enjoy prestige. And why? Because the colonial powers looked at these Creoles as degenerate bastard languages, right? And the prejudice associated with this variety made it stigmatized and extinct. Many of the Creoles are no more spoken, there is no speaker of that. They have become extinct. Some of them survive. However, in the last 50, 60 years or 70 years, changes in political and academic interests, right, have improved the status of Creoles both as living languages and as object of linguistic study. And you see that in the after 1960s, you see suddenly a lot of studies emerging, right? And lots of theories, lots of explanations, lots of historical accounts of emergence of these Creoles emerged post 1960s. And that attitude towards these languages also changed. So today in Africa, in other parts also, there are some Creoles which have been announced as official languages, right? And they have got extended political social functions, but most of them have become extinct, right? So there is a process called decreolization. So since Creole languages rarely attain official status, the speakers of a fully formed Creole may eventually feel compelled to confirm their speech into one of the parent languages. That's the pressure of identity, linguistic identity, that the speakers need to confirm to a well-established prestige variety of these parent languages from where these Creoles have emerged. And there is a deliberate attempt to lexify and heavily borrow rules, linguistic items from the parent language to make this Creole look like a very close dialect of the parent language. And this is a social pressure, identity pressure that compels the speaker to draw heavily from the parent language. And it becomes like a dialect of the lexifier parent language. This process is called decreolization, and decreolization is a movement or a tendency or a process of bringing this newly emerged Creole close to superstrate parent language. And this is how it is. So, let us summarize the whole idea, right? So we say that Creoles are, Creoles are the extended version of Pidgin, and they're established, naturalized, and they have extended social function, right? The development of Creoles have taken place in the last 500 years because of the extended navigation by European powers and undertaking a lot of other world territories as their colonies. So they established colonies there, and the urgent need to communicate with the local community where there was no language common. It forced the situation forced them to develop a restricted code. This restricted code called Pidgin over a period of time gets extended and elaborated in terms of both linguistically and socially. They're elaborated, their functions are elaborated, and then they become established, regularized, and naturalized, and finally nativized. And when we say nativized means this variety is acquired by the coming generations as mother tongue, and it becomes a Creole. And when it becomes a Creole, social functions are extended. So it's no more merely a limited code for a limited social function, but it becomes it has extended social function with extended linguistic roles, and then a whole speech community emerges, right? And this language becomes language of that speech community. But when you look at the social aspect of sociology of this new emerged variety, because it developed out of compulsion and compulsive need to communicate, uh, this is considered, this was considered by the colonial powers as a degenerate, bastard language. So, because low prestige value was attached to it, it did not emerge as official or prestige language, right? But in the last 50-60 years, the situation has changed. The stigma attached to Creoles led to the extinction of Creoles, and very few Creoles are survive today. They survive today. Interestingly, they all have developed along the coastal areas of the world: Americas, Africas, right, Southeast Asia, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Philippines, Macau, so all these areas, Africa, Americas for that matter. So, because of this stigma, they could not acquire prestige, but the situation has changed. And what we see after 60s, 1960s, in the late 20th century, we see a new interest emerging and a political support and a political movement, as well academic interest that made this new variety, uh, you know, uh, a very important sub object of study, and we see a lot of studies emerging during this period. And in some parts, some of the Creoles have attained the status of official language. But again, the process of decreolization made them become almost like close to the parent language and one of the varieties of it, because the identity pressure on the speakers of Creoles compelled them to draw heavily from the superstate parent language, and parent language becomes lexifier for this variety, and ultimately it emerges as one of the dialects. In the decreolized version, it emerges as one of the dialects of the parent language. In India, you have Nagamese and Assamese based Creole on the border areas of Nagaland and Assam. Some Creoles now they have become extinct in Goa, west part of India, and you find a sort of Hindi based Creole in Andaman. Apart from other Creoles like English based Creoles, Spanish based Creoles, French based Creoles, Portuguese based Creoles, Arabic based Creoles in other parts of the world. So this is how the process of creolization has led to emergence of over 100 varieties in last 500 years, and the process of decreolization had changed the form they were earlier, and it's continuing. Some of the Creoles have become extinct and some of them still survive. So this is the story of the birth of a new language through the process of creolization. Thank you.